Only 3 movies have ever done it. The Grand Slam. The Big Five. Best Writing, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and of course, Best Picture. 1991's Silence of the Lambs did it. 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did it. And the granddaddy of them all, the subject of today's video, 1934's It Happened One Night. So what grand feat of filmmaking forged this most hallowed of Academy Award achievements? What brilliant gem set the standard of greatness in 1934?
My father was a great piggybacker.
Here, hold this a minute.
Ow! Ow!
Thank you.
Ah. Well, I'm sure it has some killer subtext, at least. Honestly, reading about the history on this one makes it feel like the little film that could. No studio wanted to touch it except for Columbia, which is far from the prestigious studio it is now. In fact, it was the studio that larger studios would send their contract stars to as punishment. That's how they ended up with Clark Gable as the leading man, punishing him for his affair with Joan Crawford. They only managed to net Claudette Colbert after a half-dozen other actresses turned the role down, and she only accepted after having her salary doubled, and with the promise that filming would be done in 4 weeks. So with all the cards stacked against it, what was the result? Let's find out. This is 1934's It Happened One Night. The technical. It Happened One Night is a simple film. It doesn't have show-stopping set pieces or gorgeous cinematography, nor should it. Most of it takes place in cramped spaces, either small hotel rooms or a bus. The outdoor scenes feel intimate. It doesn't make for a memorable movie visually, but it's not a movie about that. It's about 2 people who meet and, spoiler alert, fall in love. The fact that it takes place over several states is secondary. The camera work is smooth, the framing is textbook, the sound is a bit inconsistent, but nothing too distracting. What else can I say? Director Frank Capra knew what was important, and he didn't let any fancy camera tricks get in the way. The writing. Alright, stop me if you've heard this one. A wealthy socialite flees home. On her way, she meets up with a kind stranger. Initially, they cannot stand each other, but they continue on out of necessity. As they go on, they develop a fondness for each other, resulting in an unlikely friendship and, eventually, romance. It's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as It Happened One Night. Yes, the story is cliché, and even a child would be able to tell how it's going to end, but predictability isn't all bad. It's all in execution, and the Academy Award-winning script for It Happened One Night is... alright. To be fair, the plot was a whole lot more fresh in 1934, but one of the goals of this series is to take the movies out of context and view them as a casual viewer would today. And by today's standards, It Happened One Night is starting to show its age. It does have laughs scattered throughout, and the story only seems to drag a bit at the very end. A few of the jokes, such as the bit about the walls of Jericho, the great impenetrable blanket barrier Clark Gable erects to preserve Colbert's spoiled socialite character's modesty, are clearly building towards punchlines that are too predictable to be funny. Other jokes, such as Gable's handling of a nosy fellow passenger who threatens to cut the whole trip short, feels mean-spirited. Oftentimes, the script descends into pointless banter that does nothing to advance the plot, with the whole thing leaning entirely on the chemistry between Gable and Colbert, the only actors with anything to do in the movie. The father and the love interest of Colbert's Ellie Andrews pop in occasionally, as does the editor of the paper Gable's Peter Warren works for, but their appearances are so sporadic throughout the movie that it's easy to forget they're even there, and their names aren't worth remembering. The whole affair is inoffensive, but even the casual moviegoer has seen the same story many, many times before, and probably done much better. The acting. There's really not much to be said. The movie is carried by Gable and Colbert, who are very convincing in their roles, but that's not exactly difficult. I mean, there's not a whole lot to stretch for here, unlike in, say, Silence of the Lambs, where Anthony Hopkins had to embody an insane cannibalistic genius gentleman. Clark Gable just has to play a semi-sleazy newspaper reporter who stumbles on a pretty good story. Unlike in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where Louise Fletcher had to step into the skin of a humorless, sadistic, domineering head nurse, Claudette Colbert simply had to play a young woman who was mad at her daddy. That's not saying anything against either of the actors who bring all they can to the roles, and they have good chemistry, but there's nothing much to either of them. Actually, neither choice was particularly popular at the time, with Colbert winning over the more popular Bette Davis's role in Of Human Bondage, and rumors still swirl about MGM, who had Gable under contract, somehow ensuring that he would win to promote his career with them and make him a bona fide leading man, over the more popular Charles Laughton in The Barretts of Wimpole Street. In fact, Colbert was so convinced that she had no chance of winning that she didn't even show up to the Academy Award ceremony, having to be dragged in from the train station to accept her award. There are no truly bad performances here, we're not talking Broadway Melody or Cimarron, but there's nothing quite as legendary as you would expect from a dual Best Actor, Best Actress winner. Twice in a row now, I have been extremely excited to see a landmark moment in Academy Award history, only to be kind of let down. Much like Cavalcade, there's nothing particularly bad about It Happened One Night. It just isn't all that interesting by today's standards. I've seen this movie several times, and each time I see it, I enjoy it, but I always find myself, whenever the credits start rolling, wondering how a movie like this has managed to wedge itself so firmly into the annals of Academy Award history. A good movie, to be sure, but not half as impressive as the facts and statistics would have you believe. Oh, Clark Gable again?